Hi, I would like to welcome you today to our webinar on streamlining of your budgeting process. This is specifically for nonprofit organizations. I am Keith Greeno from Acima Solutions, and today what I wanted to just deal with is just an overview of the budgeting process and streamlining it. We're going to try to deal with this in 30 minutes, but we just want to really show you how automation can streamline your processes and make it a lot easier for your organizations to budget. So as the agenda today, what we wanted to talk about is some current issues with the budgeting process and just what is happening currently in the market and what we can do to maybe solve that. Then we're going to be just discussing the budget process as a whole and just the flow of that whole system. And then we're going to be talking about the individual steps and just showing you how the automation process can be used to make this significantly better and faster for your organization and save you significant amounts of time. Then following up with spending controls, because budgets are useless unless you have something where you can actually use them by. And so it's really just talking about what's available out there to help you with the spending controls with your budgets. Then talking about budget reporting, the summary of the benefits to you, and then just discussion on is it right for you and how do you decide that, and then questions to finish up. Okay, let's talk about and move into the current nonprofit budgeting issues. And so really budgeting has moved from being a budget numbers and just getting the numbers on what's going to go on, and really becomes a roadmap for achieving strategic goals for your organization. You set the goals, and really the budgeting becomes kind of that step-by-step, how do we proceed with that on an annual basis towards those goals. So it's becoming more important that we do budgeting and do it well. And so what are some of the issues that are coming up as a result of this? So the data is decentralized. And if we're using Excel, and most of nonprofits and most people are, they're using it for their budgeting. But can you download or upload the data at all? Or do you have to rekey it, as it's talking about in the next one? Because what you're doing is you're creating data in the accounting system and then data in these Excel spreadsheets, which are both having to be updated and kept current all of the time, and it causes problems. The other problem that comes out with decentralization is how do you analyze the data? How can you look at, not only this year, 2015, but I want to look at 2014 and 13 because things have happened and I want to be able to look at it to make sure I've got the right data. It's difficult if you have it in multiple containers. The other thing being collaboration and consolidation of this information is extremely difficult because if you have multiple copies of the spreadsheet, how do you know that somebody else has done something which is different than what you're doing? Or how do you know that if they've done the budgeting for the telephone and they've already looked up that the price is going up by 5%, that doesn't go across to all of the departments so everybody knows telephone's going up by 5%? So the more decentralized you have the data, the more different pools that you've got, the more difficult it is to be able to maintain control of budgeting. So the next one being is that this lack of control. And so managers have to manually control the information, who they sent the spreadsheets to, what version of the spreadsheets have they got. Has everybody been distributed the information? Do they have access to the actual data? And so this becomes much more difficult to control when you're running with either a spreadsheet type environment and not automation where everything's integrated. Manual consolidations, so as all of the information comes back, somebody has to manually go back through there, whether it's at the department level with programs or it's at the administration level with multiple divisions. Somebody has to go in and manually take all of these individual spreadsheets and roll them up into a total. Difficult. Lack of control. Also, someone can make a structure change in there, or someone may not be able to may not upload their data on a timely basis. How do you control that they didn't put that spreadsheet in? You think it's up to date. They don't, right? They don't have the data in there. Therefore, you're grabbing old data and bringing it in. Or if someone's changed the line, you cannot consolidate very easily because somebody's got to go through there and make the adjustment. And then the last thing for control is really spreadsheets are not secure. They're easily open to all kinds of modifications. And how do you control that somebody else doesn't get in there? Yes, you can have passwords, but it again becomes more difficult to control the whole process when you're starting to send off multiple sheets to multiple people, or you've got paper flowing around, so control is weak. Let's move into some other ones. Takes too long. Average process, 2 to 5 months. We were talking to one organization, it's taking 7 months to do the budgeting process. This has taken a huge amount of time. It is extremely costly. I mean, in this next stat, they're talking about 20% of the time taken up by budgeting. Well, think about what that equates to across your overall organization. If that number is true, sometimes it's higher. And if it's taken 5 months, how much time has it taken for everybody in that whole process to make this happen? And then you go into, are the numbers accurate? Because if it's taking you that long, are the numbers even relevant anymore? As we're saying, contributors to the various information, they may go back and say, hey, 5 months ago, I thought that the world was round. Now I know that it's flat, or vice versa, right? But the problem is that do they see relevance in the numbers that they've actually built for you guys, right? And so lots of times, if the time is large up here where it's taking a long time, the relevance of the information becomes it's not there. Oil prices used to be at $100 a barrel, and everybody thought, gee, where's it going to hit the peak? Now it's running at below 50. What are the relevance of our budgeting numbers if we used oil as one of our indicators, right? And the other thing is, how do we get the results out of it? And we'll talk about this at the end a little bit with the reporting engines. But again, the numbers aren't accurate because the time frame is too large. The other thing is that how do we document the numbers where we're making an assumption that inflation is going to be 2%? We want to make sure that we embed that into these systems so that we know that that was the assumptions that we used. And if the inflation is going up, then we can make the adjustment. Okay? So with automated systems, we can certainly help out with these inaccurate numbers. And then budgets are not timely. Budgets often are only done annually, and that's because they just take too stinking long to get done, especially in a nonprofit where there's lots of divisions. And so how do we speed that up? Because as I was saying, things are changing all the time. Or as we were talking about down below here, program and funding is not based on fiscal year, where let's say with the current climate and we've got these Syria refugees that are coming in, and the government is committed to 25,000 of them in Canada. How do we possibly sit down and budget for a program where they may give us an extra $3 million to take care of 200 refugees of the 25,000 in our particular area, right? How do we budget for that when all of a sudden it happened and our budgets were done and now we're moving into the next one and it's taking us 5 months? It's impossible. And so we need to make sure that our budgeting process can be done on a more timely basis, faster, right? And we don't want the numbers to be out of date by the time the darn numbers are complete. The last one in here is, continual budgeting is difficult. But really, let's face it, if we're finished our October year end, why can't we budget for October of 2016 right now? So the point being is that with the budgeting process that we're currently doing, they're just too slow. The numbers are not accurate. It's not timely. As we were talking about before, the decentralized information makes it difficult to collaborate, and we have a hard time controlling the information. So what's the solution? How can we solve these things? So let's just take a look at the next one right? And here's a little comic that I found, and I love this, right? We're pretty sure each of these gray bars represents something significant. But if this is, 6 months or a year down the road, how do we remember what's going on, right? And it doesn't have to be this way. But I saw this, and I loved it, and so I just put it in here for some relevance on budgeting. But let's talk about the budgeting process. And so really what we're talking about is that this blue is kind of our budgeting engine. This is where this automation can happen, okay? And inside this thing, lots of manipulations can happen with the data. But really what we want to do is grab it from our accounting database, and this is all like information. So information needs to flow very easily from our accounting into these systems. Then we just need to sit down and ask ourselves, all right, is there multiple divisions? Okay, let's divide up the budget into multiple divisions or departments or whatever we've got, right? Do we need additional detail in here? Do we need to take it down to a more finite information where we're talking about number of immigrants, number of staff members, number of different things that are happening, or number of events that you're going to be putting on? do we need to detail this out? And that information may not be available in your general ledger, but might be available in other places in your databases or available in other databases. So we can pull all of this information into our budgeting engine if we need to, right, to do the budgeting. Understanding is that we can also, if we want to, and we'll show you this in some of the slides, we can actually move it out and put it into Excel if you want. If Excel is something that you really love, we can use these budgeting information tools to move data straight from your accounting system into Excel, where now we can still move it up, we can still do the documentation, we can still do the budgeting analysis and move it back up and write it into our accounting system. Or you can leave it in the actual budgeting software itself, where we can add documentation into here. As far as, when inflation was 3%, or we're planning on hiring an extra 20 staff, or we're planning on 25 new immigrants coming in underneath one of these special programs. So we put that documentation into our budget so that we've got some more accurate numbers, we've got more accountability on why we did the budgeting the way we did, and then we can move it into analytical tools, which we will show you, where we can sit down and analyze this data over and over in multiple ways so that we try to make the data more accurate before we write it back into our accounting system and actually start doing more reporting with it. Okay, so this is the overall process, and what I want to talk about now is just these steps and how the automation can help you with these steps. So let's talk about grabbing the information from the accounting and moving it down. And so this is a particular software called Info Explorer. And what it does is it goes into a Sage 300 system, grabs the information. I just say open up, create a new one. It comes up and says, okay, what's the fiscal year I want to bring in? So right now it's 2019. We jumped ahead a little bit. But what we've got, we bring it in, we hit the button OK, and this is what it does, is it generates all of the actuals for period 1, 2, 3, right across. You can see it scrolls across the whole screen, right? If I've done multiple years, obviously this screen just gets bigger, right? And we have to scroll further. We can sort these columns however we want, but what it allows us to do is get a very quick picture and say, here's the budget, here's the actuals, here's the budget, here's the actuals, right? And so we can compare this very quickly, right? This is on the totals for this particular item, or I can give this to individual department managers for just department commercial 100, and all he's going to get is just this row of numbers instead. So very, very quick and easy. This is taking probably less than 30 seconds to grab the information and have it so that we can actually start the budgeting process quickly. Now, if we do it from a Excel spreadsheet, right, this is another budget generator. And what it does is it's actually generating the same kind of information, and we can, define what fiscal periods, what year. We can do it by individual departments, right, if we want to. We could do it with the other one, as I said. But what this does is this generates the information very, very quickly into the budgeting system so that we can start the budgeting process. So if we take a look at it from the first one, this is the kind of information. You're snapshotting it down into here. We can have all these columns as I showed you before, right? Or we can bring it into Excel spreadsheets. And this is in an Excel spreadsheet, okay? Again, I don't have to rekey it. It's grabbing the actual data from the actual information in my accounting system, and I can come in here and start doing budgeting right from here. So step one, moving data from my accounting databases into the budgeting tools, very quick, very easy. So let's move into step two. Let's actually start updating the budgets. So what we've got is all of the formats in here, and again, we can change this on the fly if we want. We can drag and drop and bring region down in here, or we can leave it up above, but it does not change any of the real data. All of the budgeting is still in here, but when I'm in here and I am the manager or I am the administrator and I want to start budgeting, I can say, okay, I want to make it even, so I click on even, I bring it across, I grab the total, and it will automatically bring across, and you can see that what it's done is it moved in 186,000 into the budget for every period right across, because I just clicked even, move it across based on total, and it calculates it all through here. So this is allowing you to very quickly look at actuals. Again, I can have multiple years in here if I want. All I have to do, right mouse click on fiscal period, add multiple years in here, and it changes this so that it's got 2020 and 2019. So it's giving you lots of tools to allow your managers, your division managers, or your program managers to be able to come in and do their budgeting and all roll up into a major budget all quickly. Okay? Giving lots of collaboration, being able to allow consolidations, being able to put it in on a timely fashion without rekeying. So when we're into the actual budget information itself, as I said, we've clicked on this for evenly across the whole period. You see that it changes this all to 204,000, right? But I can come in here and change an individual figure. So I can say, listen, I want it even, 240. I can come out here and say, hey, that one's obviously wrong. This guy's always been better in period 5, so I'm going to put in and I'll change it, click on it, and change it to 225,000. It just updates it. So very easy to do direct entry into these budgeting information tools. Okay? So now let's move into the next step. So understand, so what we're talking about is moving data. Either we're moving it into the budgeting software or we're moving it into an Excel spreadsheet through the budgeting software. And you can do your manipulations. And so then the next step that we wanted to do is just, okay, do we want to go further? Do we want to start trying to break down by budget based on clients served? I mean, this is underneath items and customers, but really I could change it very, very quickly over to clients based on the data in your nonprofit. But this is going and grabbing information out of your accounting system, which is not necessarily related to your general ledger. And this can also come from other databases as well. So it does not have to just be your accounting. It could be other databases. And that's critical, because if you've got other databases that you're using, that does not mean that you cannot use one of these budgeting tools. It just means that there's a couple additional hooks that have to happen. And this is optional. So some people may not go down to this level. So if we just quickly jump back to our flowchart here. In the flowchart, what we're talking about, is there multiple divisions? Okay, yes, but this is no, then we just came jumping straight across over into the documentation. Okay, so you can go in as much detail as you want to with these systems. Okay, let's just move back quickly to this optional level. And again, so what we're talking about is the next step, optional level on documentation. So some people may just, okay, I'm going to write my documentation myself outside the system. But understand, if you're in here in the system and you've allowed for the documentation to be embedded, you can select the key with the various notes. So I can say, okay, F10 is the key that I want to push. When I push F10, it's going to open up a window like the next one here, which is saying, okay, now where do you want me to embed the information? So if I go back just a little bit again, so if I'm in this particular document or in this particular one on a budget, I'll go click on 200, oops, excuse me, sorry about that. But when I click on this 204 that I wanted to change it to 25,000, I could click on it, open up a documentation on it and say, listen, period 5 has always been higher, therefore I want to budget at, well, it's 269 actually is the actual coming here. So I want to budget this to 270. So that can happen very, very quickly with regards to the documentation. So then after we've got documentation, the next process flow is actually moving into the analysis of the data. So if I wanted to add multiple periods in here or multiple years in here, I can easily do it. But what I can do is, as the manager, department, the program manager, everybody, I can easily see, do these numbers make sense? And so you can quickly just scroll across and go, yeah, hold it, this one maybe is out, right? Or maybe actual is not the right, maybe I'll go back and change this. Instead of taking it to evenly, I might take it proportionally based on last year's actuals, round them to the nearest 1,000. I can do that very quickly with the data. But it's an analytical view where I can come in here after I've done my budget to just try to get it more accurate, to try to get the information so that it makes sense. Because that's the whole purpose of this, is trying to look so that we're looking forward to see what's going on. And if we don't like it with the numbers, I mean, remember, I'm kind of one of these anal retentive accountants that looks at numbers and I go, yeah, I kind of like this. A lot of people don't like that. And so we can actually do this where those same numbers are, and this is talking about salesperson chart, but I could come in here and change the numbers in here as well, even if this is a dashboard type view, and it's going to change the graph on the fly. So, because some people say, well, this is obviously too high, let's move that down, or this might be too low, and let's move it up. And so with the graph, I can do exactly the same thing, come in and just make the adjustments, and then you'll see things evening out the way that you want it to be. So we are able to very, very quickly with these tools come in here and do an analysis of the budgets, and so it becomes much, much more timely. So I can bring data in, do the manipulation, and see what it's going to happen. Do what-if analyses on the information so I can see if I brought in 25 immigrants, right, or 25 more, how much more is it going to cost to our organization? Because we know we have to house them, we have to feed them, we have to educate them, right? All of that stuff has to happen, and how do we help them? So you can see that very quickly with graphics and or with the numbers, and you can do that with these budgeting tools as well. Okay? All right. So then the last step of this all. So once we're done with this and we're saying, okay, listen, I think we've already analyzed it. We're pretty good with it. Well, listen, I do not want to have to take that information and have to rekey it back into my accounting system. So I've got my budget. The bottom line is all you have to do is, and you usually have administrative rights on these buttons, but I click on the button which says Write Back. What it's going to do is it's going to take all of the information from these particular budget columns based on the periods that I've got in here, and it's going to write it back into my accounting system, so I've got it available for reporting out of my accounting system as well. Very, very easy, very, very quick, takes less than 30 seconds, and poof, done. So if you think about how much time it's taking your organizations right now to grab your Excel spreadsheets or your manual data and try to move it back, it is significantly time-consuming and inaccurate. You tend to make mistakes. This takes that away. And also, if you do not, so if this is out of the budgeting tool if you're using it, and this is, again, Info Explorer that we're doing, and if we're using Excel spreadsheets with the same Info Manager, which is another tool that's available, you see I can change that. If anybody used the Sage 300 system, you know darn well that they want their revenue to have negatives on it. And so your spreadsheet may not have negatives. All I have to do is click this, hit update, and it fires all of that information into my accounting system and updates it all. Okay? And this is not a one-time thing. I can do this over and over again until I got it right. Preferably you try to keep it down. But understand, if we go back to this process again, right? So let's just go back to that flow chart. Just so that we're clear on what we're talking about, is this process here. I can bring the data in, do the analysis documentation, and bring it back. I can do this over and over and over and over. Remember, in my Sage 300 accounting system, it allows us to have 5 different budget sets. So I can upload budget set 1, upload budget set 2, upload budget set 3, or rewrite budget set 1. Not a problem. This is why you want to have administrative controls on here when this is happening. But it's easy to update and maintain the budget. So if today we get 25 new immigrants, I can easily go in here, make a modification to my budget, and update it so that department heads are not just saying, by the way, I'm over budget. Oh, yeah, that's right, I got 25 new immigrants, right? So the budgeting process becomes much more timely, as we were talking about one of those issues before. Okay. So let's just jump back again, and I apologize I'm jumping around a little bit, but I just want to make sure that we're clear with the budgeting write back. So I can write it back into the system. And if you think about this, that 4, 5, 6 months that some of those people are taking, that is all because they're moving data around and it's difficult. With this process, I can send this down to the people lots of times. With an automation tool, your budgeting process is taking less than a month. And that is just significant savings to your organization, which can be used to help better everyone with regards to clientele, the immigrants, or whoever you're servicing. So let's go one more step into it. And so this is, again, out of our Sage 300 system. And you'll see that, remember those original budgets we were talking about at the 120, right? This has just moved it in. And again, this has got the same budgeting. I can still make modifications to the budgeting from here, because guess what would happen? Even if I update it into this system, the next time I go back into the other system, right, and pull it back, it's going to pull the changed information in the budget from here. So whether I change it in my accounting system or whether I change it in my budgeting tool, both systems are always linked in, because as soon as I refresh the data, it's going to grab it from here and start the process over again. Okay? All right. So let's just talk about, because budgets, so great, we've got the budget, we've written them back into our accounting system, we've got this reporting we can do. Well, how do we use these budgets? And this is critical, because really what we can do is you can get into these systems which have got control fund availability systems. This is a purchase workflow type system where before you actually can purchase something, the system will go through there and take a look at what you've got actual, what you're committed, and you'll see that this is over budget by $21,000. If you had the budget purchase order workflow built into here, if somebody tried to purchase contract services, it would not allow your program manager to do so. You would have to get approval before that happened. And so with these funds availability, you take your budget information, which has been generated with the tool, and now you can use it with these fund availability and reporting tools in your accounting system to help control spending. And so there's another webinar that we have done on purchase order workflow. Please take a look at that. But this is what it's talking about. It's taking the budget information and then using fund availability to control spending. And we can also, if you're a department head, like I say, you can look at all of the detail on what's been approved or not been approved in each one of your budget from the fund availability point of view. Then one other thing I wanted to talk about, and this is this continuous budgeting, as we talked about one of our issues up above, is that with the accounting system, once you've got all of that information written back in there, then we can actually take actuals out of your, this could be your financial statement, right? This could also have cash balances in here. So this is your actual cash balances. And then what it's doing is so today happens to be, like May 10th. So we've got our April numbers, which are actual, but all our May, June, July are all budgeted still. So I could say, give me a report today, and what it will do is it'll go grab the actual information and then pull in the budgeting information to the end of our fiscal year, which is maybe July. And it'll give us a total. Or maybe this is next year. But the point being is this allows you to do budget of your cash flows. It allows you to do budgeting of your overall financial numbers, so that, if your board of directors could take a look at this information and see all of the detail, or if they could take a look at that analytical information that you're doing, it's going to help you predict the future, because you're seeing what's going on, you're taking your budget. It gives you that ability, like the saying, it's difficult to drive a car by looking in the rearview mirror, right? It's easier to look ahead through the windshield to see where you're going. And this allows us the capability to look forward with our actual and budgeted information real time as the data is moving through. Okay? Then the last one that we wanted to talk about from the reporting point of view is just commitment accounting. Again, if you're running with a purchase order system, you can actually bring the purchase order and the amounts that we've actually incurred or said we're going to buy. You can bring it into the actual accounting data, so you can see with a combination, if we for dues and subscriptions, 26,000, we've only spent 17, so we're good, right? But we've got commitments of 11, which means we're actually under by 3,400, which you can bring this up in red. So what it's doing is just giving you a snapshot of where you are, but each one of these tools can be very useful in conjunction with budgeting to help maintain control of your organizations for nonprofits. So in summary, let's just talk about quickly going through this stuff. We can reduce some of the cycle times and some of the budgeting costs upwards of 90%, and that is just huge to some organizations. Think where you can better spend that money with additional personnel or helping out the clients and the people that really matter. Reducing errors on the data entry. Every time we do a data entry, look at it as a minimum, you're talking about a 5% error on the data entry alone. So every time we do that, if we can eliminate that data entry and give it so that everybody can see the information, it becomes better, becomes more accurate. We're able to analyze it and forecast way better. What if scenarios are huge. We can make changes and say, what happens if we brought in those 25 refugees? What would it cost? We can put that into the system, see what effect it would have on our financials without having to actually do anything to the system itself. Also, being able to do this rolling forecast, as I was saying, being able to finish off October right now and actually do an October forecast for next year, all at the same time. Why not, right? It would, instead of it all being done annually, we just keep moving it along where it doesn't turn into this huge process of trying to do budgeting. Certainly going to be faster, and being able to make better, more informed decisions. Our management would be able to look at that data, right? We give them access into that data where they can see what's going on. They're not going to be able to say, hey, I didn't know. Don't hold me accountable for that, because how was I supposed to know that I was over budget? We can give them the information when they need it based on the budgeting information, and they will be able to make better decisions. So, improving control over spending, revenue expense forecasting, reduce administration time, huge. I mean, how many times does the administration get phoned and says, hey, how much budget do I have? Hey, what are my financials like? Can I spend this? They should be able to know that as department heads and as division heads themselves. And the ability to budget on non-GL data, client service, immigrant served, various things like that. This can certainly help you guys a lot, I think. So is it right for you? It's really you guys having to sit down, each one of you, and look at the pain points and what's happening in your organizations right now. What are the costs for administration to try to budget? How much is being overspent, or how many times do people go over budget where they're overspending and you don't know why? It's already gone. How do you control it? You know, you're the executive director and you're saying, hey, listen, that guy is always over, or that gal is always over in that particular division. How do we control that spending? And so what is the cost if you don't control that? And add those up, because it sometimes is significant. And then really looking at the cost implications of not having a budget process in place. If you've got accreditations, you might lose the accreditation if you do not have good budget controls in place. Or if it's taking too much time, or the accreditation might start to complain, well, if your administration costs become too great because you're spending too much time on the budget process. So let's look at those costs and what it is costing your organization right now if we do not have these process controls in place. And then what are the benefits? You know, if you think about the benefits being better decision-making by your managers, where they're just making things happen a little bit easier without all of the turmoil, it can certainly have a big benefit to the overall organization. But once you've kind of knocked down and looked at these various costs to your organization of your current processes, and understanding what I was just showing you as far as what the benefits would be from that system, then we can sit down and say, okay, listen, what does it cost for one of these systems? Because they are not that expensive right now. They are getting to be very inexpensive. And so there can be a very quick and easy return on investment from putting in one of these solutions. Okay? Keys to success. This is something that really every organization needs to look at for all software or all capital stuff before they buy it. But you need to align the management software with the business and organization strategy. Is this software, is this budgeting software matching what your organization is looking for? Okay? And then once you make sure that it's actually matching and going where your organization wants to go, make sure that the senior management buys in and committed to it. Because if they do not, go 100% in the system, if they allow one of your department heads to say, don't do the budgeting system because, I understand that you think it's too much, and okay, I believe you, and don't do it, then don't do it, because the whole system's going to break. Don't even spend any money. And understanding that the organization needs to accept the responsibility for the improvement and change. We as a SEMA Solutions are consultants, and we want to point you in the direction and show you the tools that are available to help your organizations, but we cannot be the ones responsible for putting it in. It's your organization, your people that you need to move in the direction of helping them out. And I think as soon as you understand that you take the responsibility to assist your organization to move forward, it certainly helps and makes everything move much quicker. And then making sure that we've got plans and set goals like we were talking about before with let's determine what the benefits are going to be for putting in one of these systems. And then what we want to do is take a look after we put in one of the systems to make sure it actually is solving the problems. And do this on a continuous basis. Because software is always changing, processes are always changing, and we need to keep enhancing. And then understanding the last one is it has a huge impact on the organizational culture, which is your organization. If none of your managers have been held accountable because the accounting has always been 2 or 3 months late, understand if we turn on a system which has got budgeting, which is giving them information on a real-time basis, they are going to not like that very much because they are going to be showing up very much right away when they're overspending on stuff and they may not like it. So understand that it can have implications on your organizational culture as well. With that, I'd like to thank you very much, and we'll leave it with questions. If you do have any, please contact us, and we'd be more than happy to follow up and show you more detail on how these systems work.